Mr. President, your daughter-in-law said that there should be transparency in the Epstein case. Do you agree with her, sir?
The Attorney General's handled that very well. She's really done a very good job, and I think that when you look at it, you'll understand that. I would like to see that also, but I think the Attorney General, the credibility is very important, and you want credible evidence for something like that. And I think the Attorney General has handled it very well.
Did she tell you, what did she tell you about the review? And specifically, did she tell you at all that your name appeared in the...
No, she's given us just a very quick briefing, and in terms of the credibility of the different things that they've seen. And I would say that, these files were made up by Comey, they were made up by Obama, they were made up by the Biden, we went through years of that. With the Russia hoax, with all of the different things that we had to go through. We've gone through years of it. But she's handled it very well, and it's going to be up to her. Whatever she thinks is credible, she should release, yeah.
Good afternoon and welcome to DEA. My name is Robert Murphy, the Acting Administrator for the United States Drug Enforcement Administration. On behalf of the men and women of DEA, I'm privileged to stand here today alongside the Attorney General of the United States, whose leadership, support, and unwavering commitment to public safety has been instrumental in DEA carrying out its vital mission. It is an honor to introduce the Attorney General of the United States, PAM Bondi.
Thank you all for being here today. This is so important why we're here today. Acting Administrator Murphy, thank you for everything you do. We've been to DEA labs together. You have been fighting this every day, and I can't thank you enough. It's been an incredible few weeks for the DEA nationwide. We're here today to announce the historic success through Operation Take Back America. We should remember why this work matters. We're honored today to be here with Chelsea Curtis. She is a brave sister. She lost 2 of her brothers to drug overdoses, 1 to heroin, and her second brother she lost to cocaine that was laced with fentanyl. Chelsea works with us here at the Department of Justice, and she's in the District of Virginia, and she does amazing work, and she is paying it forward by looking out for other victims and their families and fighting this epidemic throughout our country. Thank you, Chelsea, for being here with us. Over the 4th of July weekend, DEA agents executed successful operations throughout this country, one in Columbia, South Carolina, where they seized 71 kilos of fentanyl and 20 kilos of methamphetamine. This is very near the University of South Carolina, where dealers, we all know, often target college kids. They put these drugs in pill forms to go after our kids. This includes a seizure in Fresno, California, also 4th of July weekend. Acting Director Murphy is going to get into details about these, but this is why this is so important, and this is something new that I hadn't seen. 24 pounds of carfentanil disguised as real prescription pills. Carfentanil, we all know, is even stronger than fentanyl. They often call it the elephant tranquilizer. And it was carfentanil in prescription pills to look like oxycodone. That should terrify every parent in this country. In many cases, illegal aliens are doing the work of cartels in our communities. In one recent example, just 2 weeks ago, the DEA arrested an illegal alien sitting in the front passenger seat of a trailer truck that contained over 700 pounds of methamphetamine. 700 pounds. Something else I hadn't seen, they are now putting methamphetamine in a pill form. First time we've seen that. A pill form. Now, a pill form of methamphetamine might not kill you instantly, but it can get you so addicted to meth that it can destroy your life instantly. DOJ attorneys will continue to prosecute these violent criminals, and they're all violent. If you are dealing in these drugs to Americans, to any citizen in this world, you're a violent criminal, and we will prosecute you to the fullest extent of the law. Since January 20th, DEA has been removing this poison from our streets at a historic rate. They've seized over 44 million fentanyl pills, over 4,500 pounds of fentanyl powder, over 64,000 pounds of methamphetamine, 64,000, nearly totaling the same amount that was seized in all of 2024. 541,000 pounds of cocaine. And what they're doing, they just take a little fentanyl and lace it in that cocaine, which is how Chelsea lost her brother. We will not rest until these FTOs are eliminated, their members are prosecuted or deported, and the public is safe again. Thanks to President Trump, we're able to take the handcuffs off our law enforcement officers, our great men and women at DEA who are out there every single day risking their lives to protect us and to protect our families. One big beautiful bill enhances our law enforcement capabilities by also including money for technology that will help our agents catch these criminals. And they're getting so sophisticated. And Acting Director Murphy is going to explain to you. I've never seen anything like this either in my entire career as a prosecutor, how sophisticated they are in smuggling these drugs into our country. Now, I'm going to let him explain that to you with a truckload of cucumbers that came into our country. In addition to one big beautiful bill, the Halt Fentanyl Act that was passed through Congress is now headed to the White House. That will help us because it analogs. Previously, these drugs that were coming into our country, they would change the precursors as fast as they can so they wouldn't be illegal coming into our country. No longer with the Halt Fentanyl Act. Also now, if a criminal is in possession of 100 grams or more of any fentanyl-related substance, they will face 10 years in prison minimum. President Trump, the Department of Justice, and the great men and women at the DEA will continue to fight to make America safe again. We will fight from Tampa to the Twin Cities, from Nassau County to the Golden Coast. And I can't wait for you to hear these recent cases that were just made. And to the Angel families and our incredible Angel sister who lost two brothers to drugs, and everyone affected by fentanyl, know that every day we will be out there fighting for you and your loved ones. The most important reminder we can give you here today, to high school kids, to college kids, to parents, to talk to your kids. Do not buy, take, accept any drug, any prescription drug from anyone off the street, even if it's a friend. Do not accept it. This is why. This is a real Adderall pill. This is a fake Adderall pill. You can't tell the difference. These are laced with drugs that could kill you. Over here, the oxycodone, the fake ones and the real ones. This is what was seized in Fresno, California. In Fresno, right?
Yes.
Amounts that could kill so many of our high school and college kids. They think that buying this on the street corner won't hurt them, but it will, and it can kill you. and that's why they're targeting places close to our universities as well. I'm going to let Acting Director Murphy now fill you in on all the details of these very, very important arrests that were made just within the last couple weeks. Thank you all for your attention to this very important matter.
Thank you, Attorney General Bondi. Men and women of the DEA lead the...
And to jump in on that same topic, though, minimum 10 years in prison for almost all of these defendants, some 20, some 40, depending on the amount of drugs, the type of drugs, the level of drugs. Go ahead.
An off-topic question
Sure.
for you, Attorney General. Today on social media, President Trump made allegations about mortgage fraud against Senator Schiff. I'm wondering if you can comment on that and whether or not that issue has been heard and will be looked at by the judge.
Yeah, I just was told about those comments walking into this room, and we don't comment on whether there is or is not a pending investigation. But thank you. Anything else on topic today? Go ahead.
Madam Attorney General, on this matter of fentanyl, which is a priority clearly for the DEA, Department of Justice, are you confident you're going to still be here to execute this because there's so many people calling for change at the Department of Justice?
I'm going to be here for as long as the president wants me here, and I believe he's made that crystal clear. It's 4 years, well, 3.5 now, right? We've got 6 months in, and it feels like 6 years.
Yeah, exactly.
But I was with Director Patel this morning, and we are working on fighting violent crime. We are working on all these issues that we deeply care about to make America safe again and get these drugs off our streets. You know, we've been working on this since my really last 2 years. Fentanyl was coming on the market when I was State Attorney General. And now with these cartels, it's coming back. It's coming in more than ever. And the border has stopped that, but we're going to catch them and we're going to prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law.
Yes, sir.
Madam Attorney General, is there disruption at the leadership of DOJ and the FBI with your relationship with PAM Bondino that is affecting the operations of the DOJ?
No, I'm not going to talk about personnel matters. No, I was with Director Patel all morning, and we are committed to keeping America safe, making America safe, working with our incredible partners at DEA, FBI, ATF, U.S. Marshals to do everything we can to make America safe, and that's what we're focused on. And today, we're focused on protecting our kids. And I would ask all of you, when you leave, go look at that wall outside, right outside this room, of all the fentanyl deaths, all the faces of fentanyl that you have done an amazing job putting up. Thank you all.
Deputy Director Bongino.
Following up on that.
Yes, go ahead.
I wanted to follow up on that question. I think the American people have a lot of questions about your relationship with the Deputy FBI Director. Do you believe that he should stay in his role?
I'm not going to discuss personnel matters. I think we all are committed to working together now to make America safe again, and that's what we're doing. Only on topic, guys. Go ahead.
First of all, I believe when you're in a public forum, you can choose or not choose to answer any questions, but I don't believe it is your right to ask us to restrict those questions. That said, I will keep this on topic.
Thank you.
How can you keep America safe again when the president's budget for 2026 cuts DEA by $212 million and the FBI by $500 million? Can you support those cuts? Do you think they will harm your capacity to fight?
Well, it won't. That's a great question. It won't harm our capacity to fight. I'll tell you that. We can always do more with more, but we can do more with less, and that's what we're committed to doing. The big, beautiful bill also adds a tremendous amount for us in combating especially the drug crisis. Billions of dollars, I believe.
I think it's $500 million.
Yeah, let me see. $3.3 billion in the big, beautiful bill to combat drug trafficking, support the prosecution of immigration matters, and gang-related crimes. So that crosses all agencies as well. So that bill will greatly help us as well, in addition to the budget. We also have a $3.5 billion reimbursement fund for state and local agencies that are enforcing the Immigration Act, drug and human trafficking laws. And human trafficking is also something we're not talking about today, but is very, very important to us. So yes, there are billions of additional dollars in addition to the original budget. So that was a great question. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I think that's all.
The president said today you would release credible files related to Mr. Epstein. Are you prepared to do that, and when would you?
Our memo speaks for itself, and we'll get back to you on anything else. I haven't seen all of his statements today. Thank you.
And how would you respond to the MAGA base that has expressed a lot of frustration about it?
We're going to fight to keep America safe again, and we're fighting together as a team. That's what's so important right now. You know, we've got a war on drugs. We've got a war on human trafficking. We've got cartels in this country, and we are going to do. We've got foreign adversaries around this world as well, and we're all going to work together as a team to fight to keep America safe again. And I can tell you, that's what we're all committed to. Thank you. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for, please show these pictures today. Thank you.
If anybody needs B-roll, there's some B-roll, especially of the cucumbers, the thing I talked about, some great video of that. If you need it, Shanaz, we can get that to them. So there's plenty of it. Yes.
Mr. President, your daughter-in-law said that there should be transparency in the Epstein case. Do you agree with her, sir?
The Attorney General's handled that very well. She's really done a very good job, and I think that when you look at it, you'll understand that. I would like to see that also, but I think the Attorney General, the credibility is very important, and you want credible evidence for something like that. And I think the Attorney General's handled it very well.
Did she tell you, what did she tell you about the review? And specifically, did she tell you at all that your name appeared in the
No, she's given us just a very quick briefing, and in terms of the credibility of the different things that they've seen. And I would say that, you know, these files were made up by Comey, they were made up by Obama, they were made up by the Biden, we went through years of that. With the Russia hoax, with all of the different things that we had to go through. We've gone through years of it. But she's handled it very well, and it's going to be up to her. Whatever she thinks is credible, she should release, yeah.
President Donald Trump and Attorney General Pam Bondi today facing even more questions over their complete 180 on whether or not all the Epstein files should be released. President Trump was asked directly if the Attorney General has told him whether his name is in these files related to the sex trafficking investigation into Jeffrey Epstein.
Did she tell you at all that your name appeared in the file?
No, she's given us just a very quick briefing, and in terms of the credibility of the different things that they've seen. And I would say that, you know, these files were made up by Comey, they were made up by Obama, they were made up by the Biden, but she's handled it very well, and it's going to be up to her. Whatever she thinks is credible, she should release.
Again, for the record, there's like literally zero evidence that these files were made up by Comey or Obama or Biden. The Epstein case was originally handled in 2005 to 2008 by local authorities in Palm Beach, Florida, and then by the George W. Bush Justice Department and FBI. Then Trump's first-term Justice Department in 2018, 2019. Now, just moments after President Trump deferred to the Attorney General, CNN's Paula Reed got a chance to ask her to respond.
You said that he would support you releasing additional credible evidence from the Epstein investigation. Is that something that you are open to doing? He said this just a few moments ago.
This today is about fentanyl. This is about a wall of people right outside this room who have died from, I appreciate your question, but this today is about fentanyl overdoses throughout our country and people who have lost loved ones to fentanyl. That's the message that we're here to send today. Nothing about Epstein. I'm not going to talk about Epstein.
So look, fentanyl is an incredibly important issue, one that we cover on the show all the time, but it's a little difficult to hear that message from the Attorney General on top of the assertion from the Justice Department now that there's nothing to see here, given how much Pam Bondi and other members of the Trump administration have been hyping all of this. And in February, Attorney General Bondi went on Fox, of course, the only channel she ever goes on, and she hyped up the release of the Epstein files, saying that the client list was literally sitting on her desk.
What you're going to see hopefully tomorrow is a lot of flight logs, a lot of names, a lot of information.
So we know now that what she ended up releasing had already been widely publicly available. In fact, some of the documents were redacted and were unredacted on the internet. You'll note that Trump's stance on releasing more of the Epstein files as of this weekend was nothing to see here, move along. But that landed his administration firmly in the MAGA doghouse for the first time. And now they're perhaps trying to figure out how to get out of that doghouse. Let's bring in CNN's Paula Reed and CNN senior White House correspondent Kristen Holmes. And Paula, you got that Epstein question to Attorney General Bondi. What did you make of her answer, and what are you hearing about how this is all playing out in the Justice Department and the FBI?
What was so fascinating about this press conference is we know Bondi has several options on the table. One, release additional material. The president says he's in favor of that. She's not committing to doing that. Could always appoint a special counsel. She's not there yet. But here it's clear she's willing to try to ride this out. She appeared at this press conference where you don't usually always see an attorney general about drug interdiction, and she took questions. I was actually very surprised because it wasn't just my question. She got half a dozen questions about Epstein. She deflected every single one. At the end, the only thing she really said was, my memo last week speaks for itself. We've seen President Trump do this many times, right? Ride out controversy, play the long game. It's unclear if this is going to work for her because this isn't something that has been drummed up by the press corps or reporters. We historically really haven't been asking about Epstein. We've asked about immigration, violent crime, other controversies. But if you look at everything that she's done since day one, she could tweet about her dog and you still get all of these MAGA supporters asking her about Epstein. This is something that the base, the president's supporters are focused on, and it's not clear if this strategy that she is pursuing now is going to work out in the long run. And if it doesn't, if this doesn't go away, she still has those other options. She could release more material. They could petition the court to unseal some things. They could also try to pass it off to a special counsel. The one thing she made clear today, Jake, she is not going to do is step aside. She suggested that she is committed to this job for up to four years.
So, and just to be clear here, we're talking about dozens, if not hundreds, of young girls who were victimized by Jeffrey Epstein, a predator,
yes,
who did not get to see justice, and whether or not, and there's questions about whether or not there were other wealthy men who were part of this criminal enterprise. Kristen Holmes, to you now. Today, President Trump saying, well, if the Attorney General wants to release more, she can. So what's the strategy here?
I'm not really sure that they have a strategy beyond waiting this out. I mean, I've talked to a number of people around President Trump. Many of them believe, and this is White House and officials in the administration, that this will blow over. But if you talk to some more of the hardcore MAGA loyalists, not necessarily in the administration, but some of the most vocal critics of Pam Bondi's, they are saying they're not giving up on this. And what you really saw after these remarks that President Trump made was them doubling down on that one tiny part of his remarks, which said that if Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, views it as credible, then she should release that information. That is not something that we had been hearing from the White House. It's not something that we had been hearing from around the administration. In fact, what we had been hearing was more in line with what the Attorney General said, that her memo speaks for itself. But now he has once again opened this door to potentially releasing new information. And what I saw today and what I received calls on from a number of these loyalists was, did you see what he said? Pam Bondi should release more information. It is unclear that that is what President Trump actually meant, but he has certainly opened up a new door here with this after he spent days saying the case was closed. Why are people even asking about Epstein? You know, people are now going to double down and call for the Attorney General to start releasing this based on just that tiny bit of what he said.
All right, Kristen Holmes, Paula Reed, thanks to both of you. Many of Epstein's victims have credited another victim, Virginia Giuffre, for giving them the courage to speak out publicly against Jeffrey Epstein. Giuffre alleged that Epstein trafficked her to his powerful friends, including Prince Andrew, who denied those allegations. Former U.S. Attorney Jeffrey Berman, a few years ago on this show, told us that Prince Andrew had originally pledged to cooperate and then refused to.
He goes on television, and it was an awful attempt to rehabilitate his, his situation. And so then he issues a press release saying he's going to cooperate with the investigations. And I say, great. I tell my team, let's go out there, let's get his testimony, let's get him on the record. Well, that wasn't going to happen. His lawyers gave us the runaround.
Giuffre sadly died by suicide in April. Let's bring in Sigrid McCauley. She's an attorney who represented victims of Epstein, including Virginia Giuffre. So thanks so much for joining us. Before we get into details of the state of this case, I just want to ask you about Virginia Giuffre, because you called her a friend What has it been like to lose her? Do you think that Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell would have even gone to prison if she had stayed silent?
Virginia Giuffre was really the heart of this case. She was the one who was brave enough to raise her voice and try to stop this sex trafficking operation that had literally gone on for over 20 years and had injured hundreds of young individuals. So she was really at the center of bringing this justice to fruition. So it's a huge loss to not have her with us anymore.
I'm so sorry that you lost your friend. Horrible, horrible situation. You've said that the Justice Department is sitting on a treasure trove of Epstein information, files from the seizures of Epstein's computers at his various homes, Palm Beach, New Mexico, New York, financial records. Why do you think the Justice Department won't release these now after making a big deal out of promising transparency? And let's be very clear here. Obviously, the names of the survivors or names of innocent people who played no role in anything, obviously you can redact their names out of it. Nobody's saying that. But there's so much information. Why do you think they're hiding it?
It's a great question. I mean, they're sitting on a multitude of information. They've had hundreds of interviews that they've undertaken over the many years they've been investigating Epstein and his co-conspirators and their crimes, and yet they're not turning over any of it. It's really, truly shocking. And as you saw in some of the early lists that they produced, many computers were taken. Think about all the email traffic between Epstein and those people who were involved in his inner circle. And the American public deserves to see that. They deserve to know how these crimes were facilitated for so long and at such a high level. And that's what's really missing here.
Good afternoon, everyone. Donald Trump and House Republicans have repeatedly betrayed the American people. Donald Trump and House Republicans promised to lower the high cost of living here in the United States of America. In fact, Donald Trump and House Republicans promised to lower costs on day one. Costs aren't going down in the United States of America. Costs are going up. Life is becoming more expensive under Donald Trump and Republican control of Congress. There is nothing in the one big ugly bill that will meaningfully make life more affordable for the American people. In fact, the one big ugly bill will make life more expensive for everyday Americans, particularly as it relates to utility costs. Utility costs are going to go up in the United States of America as a result of Donald Trump's one big ugly bill. Costs aren't going down. Republicans haven't done a damn thing to make life more affordable for the American people. Costs are too high in this country. That's why Democrats are going to continue to focus our efforts on building an economy that actually is affordable for hardworking American taxpayers. We need to lower housing costs, lower grocery costs, lower utility costs, lower child care costs, and lower insurance costs. America is too expensive. And things aren't getting better under Donald Trump and House Republican rule. They're getting worse. On top of that, Donald Trump and House Republicans jam this extreme budget bill down the throats of the American people. They will hurt millions of Americans who are going to lose their health care as a result of the one big ugly bill. Hospitals will close, nursing homes will shut down, community-based health clinics will not be able to operate, and everyday Americans in every state in this country are going to die as a result of having health care ripped away from them by Republicans in this town. The one big ugly bill rips food out of the mouths of hungry children. Who are these people on the other side of the aisle? Who are they? And on top of it all, ripping health care away from the American people, the largest cut to Medicaid in American history, ripping food out of the mouths of children, seniors, and veterans who are going to go hungry as a result of this one big ugly bill. All of this is being done to reward their billionaire donors with massive tax breaks. The largest transfer of wealth from everyday Americans to billionaires in American history. And these so-called fiscal conservatives are going to explode the debt by more than $3 trillion and set this country on a path toward possible bankruptcy. Every single House Republican who voted against the best interests of their constituents and voted to reward billionaires with massive tax breaks will be held accountable. Questions?
Thanks, Mr. Leader. Tomorrow you've got the primary for the Arizona race to replace Representative Grijalva. As far as the direction of the Democratic Party, you've got this influencer, Deja Fox, who's running, and then also Adelisa Grijalva, who's got some more endorsements. What does this say? Is this a microcosm of where the Democratic Party is right now trying to go forward?
Raul Grijalva was a leading progressive in the United States Congress, a former chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. In fact, he was a chair upon my arrival in the Congress, along with Keith Ellison, but a decades-long progressive champion for the communities that he represented in a variety of different ways in Arizona, and eventually as a national leader. So it's my expectation that whoever emerges from this primary is going to be, someone who will continue that progressive legacy on behalf of Chairman Grijalva.
Leader Jeffries, could we please get your response to Texas considering a mid-decade redistricting, and what, if any, response do you think there should be from blue states, New York or otherwise?
Donald Trump is deeply unpopular, and the one big ugly bill is deeply unpopular, and Republicans have done nothing with their majority but hurt everyday Americans. That is why they are desperate to cheat in terms of trying to rig the midterm elections by gerrymandering in an extraordinary fashion the Texas congressional map, which is already gerrymandered. House Republican leaders spent a lot of time trying to convince the American people that they just did something that they're proud of. If that, in fact, was the case, why is the first step that you are taking an effort to rig the Texas congressional map in a desperate attempt to hold on to power? In this country, in the United States of America, elected officials should earn the support of the voters that we hope to represent. Republicans want a country where politicians choose their voters, not the other way around. It reeks of desperation, and we're going to do everything that we can do in Texas and beyond to respond.
Thank you, Leader. No doubt New York is going to play a big role in who controls the House next year. We've had Republicans tell us that the nominee for New York City mayor is a gift for Republicans in New York State. Do you think he's a political liability?
Donald Trump is a gift to Democratic prospects in Virginia, New Jersey, and in the midterm elections next year.
Jumping off of that, thank you. Two questions. One, will you be meeting with Mr. Mamdani? He's going to be here in D.C. this week. So one is, will you be meeting with him when he's here, or when will you be meeting with him? And two, do you agree with Cuomo's essentially thought or request that candidates who are not leading drop out by September?
I'm scheduled to meet with the Democratic nominee at the end of the week back home in Brooklyn. Haven't had a conversation with Eric Adams or Andrew Cuomo since the primary and have no current plans to do so at this moment.
Thank you, Leader Jeffries. I have a foreign policy question, if you don't mind. What is your reaction to President Trump issuing today an ultimatum to Putin to end the war in 15 days in Ukraine or 100% secondary tariffs? How do you see this playing out, and what's the sentiment of Democrats in these news?
Vladimir Putin has spent the entire year punking Donald Trump and the Trump administration. Donald Trump promised many things to the American people and continues to betray the American people and break promise after promise after promise in a whole lot of areas, including Donald Trump's promise that there would be peace in Ukraine on day one of his presidency. How is that working out? Donald Trump has spent the first 6 months of his presidency playing footsie with Vladimir Putin. And the response from Vladimir Putin, a sworn enemy of the United States of America, has been to unleash terror on Ukrainian children, communities, and civilians. Donald Trump has zero credibility in this area. Is he just now figuring out that Ukraine is a friend to the United States of America and Russia is an enemy? Is he just now figuring out that the United States should always stand on the side of democracy, freedom, and truth, which is standing with Ukraine, as opposed to standing on the side of authoritarianism, tyranny, and propaganda, which is what he's been doing by standing with Russia and Vladimir Putin? Is he just now figuring this out? Congress has to act independently in this area, and we should sanction Russia and continue to keep the pressure on Vladimir Putin and Russia, a sworn enemy of this country, until the Ukrainian people are able to achieve victory for themselves, our NATO allies in Europe, and the free world.
Leader Jeffries, I want to get your thoughts on the Genius Act and CBDC Surveillance Act. Do you support those? Will you advance those?
Yes, my expectation to have a conversation about the crypto legislation at the leadership meeting that we have today at 5:15, and then at the steering and policy meeting, and then at the Democratic caucus meeting tomorrow morning, and I'll articulate a position on both pieces of legislation thereafter.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Speaker Johnson was asked yesterday the legislative agenda going forward now that the reconciliation bill is passed. He said that Republicans are going to pursue up to 2 more reconciliation bills. One as soon as this fall, one next spring. He said that Republicans were going to push for lower level funding for their 2026 funding bills, more rescission packages, and, quote, codifying Trump executive orders. I want to get your response to that legislative agenda. How will Democrats continue to push back? And do you think that it's wise, if you say that the reconciliation bill that just passed is so unpopular, do you think that it's wise to pursue additional party line pieces of legislation?
If the Republican legislative agenda in the House continues to be to unleash chaos, cruelty, and corruption on the American people, we will continue as Democrats to strongly oppose it.
Over the last few days, a number of members of your caucus have been posting and engaging in some of the discourse about Jeffrey Epstein. Is this appropriate for your members to be doing so? Do you want to see any action on that front?
The American people deserve to know the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth as it relates to this whole sordid Jeffrey Epstein matter. Democrats didn't put the Jeffrey Epstein thing into the public domain. This was a conspiracy that Donald Trump, Pam Bondi, and these MAGA extremists have been fanning the flames of for the last several years. And now the chickens are coming home to roost. The American people deserve to know the truth. What, if anything, is the Trump administration and the Department of Justice hiding? What are you hiding? If you're not hiding anything, prove that to the American people. And if you are trying to hide something, as many of Donald Trump's MAGA supporters apparently believe, then the Congress should actually work hard to try to uncover the truth for the American people. There are only two things that are possible here. Option one, Donald Trump, PAM BONDI, and the MAGA extremists intentionally lied to the American people for years about the Jeffrey Epstein situation. That's option one. Option two is that, in fact, there's reason for the American people to be concerned as it relates to what information has not been released that could be damaging to the Trump administration and the friends and family of the Trump administration and their billionaire corrupt supporters. And so they're actively engaging in a cover-up. Option one, they lied for years. Option two, they're engaging in a cover-up. At this point, it seems reasonable that can only be one of the two things. And so it's Congress's responsibility in a bipartisan way to ask the questions and try to get answers on behalf of the American people.
Two of your members have introduced or announced legislation to either force or urge the administration to release all the files related to Jeffrey Epstein. Have you had a conversation with those members? Do you plan to? Do you support those pieces of legislation?
I haven't had a conversation with those members or an opportunity to evaluate the resolution and the legislation. However, I think transparency and sunlight for the American people is always the better course of action.
The Senate is going to be voting later today on Trump's first judicial nominee of his second administration. Do you think Democrats have done enough to oppose Trump's judicial nominees thus far?
Democrats in the Senate have been working incredibly hard to push back.
Let's just talk about what happened in terms of the facts within the administration over the past 72 hours. And then we'll get to whether he was an agent for us, for Israel, for somebody else. Not at all. We don't know. Okay. As we went to, to off air on Friday, we found out that it was either she goes or I go situation between Bongino, deputy director of the FBI, and Pam Bondi. And I confirmed that with my own reporting, that they had a massive blow up on Monday, a week ago today, in the wake of that memo, that it had resulted in shouting, that it culminated in a second meeting at the White House on Wednesday. And Susie Wiles, who's the chief of staff for Trump, but a Florida native, and I think reportedly close with Pam Bondi, seemed to be trying to put it to bed and see if, Dan could calm down and Pam could calm down, both of whom had been screaming at each other. And it didn't go very well. And the next thing we hear is Bongino saying, I'm leaving unless she leaves, or does something more to come clean or be more transparent about the whole Epstein thing. That was on Friday. And then over the weekend, I will say my own sources said there'd been a softening because the president got involved in some way. And as of today at noon Monday, Bongino has not resigned, but we don't know exactly where it stands. She's clearly fighting back too. She's dropped, obviously, this is my supposition, some hit pieces on him in various places, including Axios, saying he's just having a hissy fit because he was behind the minute before midnight that's missing in the Epstein tapes from that cell block, which don't show his cell, but show an area near his cell, and that he was caught embarrassed because he didn't highlight that minute before midnight that was missing, but it soon came out, and now he's scrambling to sort of look like he's been tougher on this issue than he actually has been. And Todd Blanche, who's her deputy at DOJ and President Trump's former personal lawyer, has come out with a statement on X saying there is no daylight between the FBI and DOJ at all on that memo that came out last Sunday. I will tell you, my own reporting suggests that's not true. But Blanche trying to put on a united front between DOJ and FBI. That's where it stands today. What do you make of that piece of the story?
So first of all, I'm hearing many of the same things that you're hearing, Megan. I'm sure, to many of the same people that you're talking to here. And my take on the story is pretty simple. I think that Pam Bondi botched this 8 ways from Sunday. I have not seen a bigger botchery of a rollout of a story maybe ever. and that is really what you're looking at here. I think that what you're looking at is Pam Bondi went on Fox News, at the very best, was unclear when she said, the Epstein list is on my desk. She didn't actually say the Epstein list is on my desk. There's a reference to the Epstein list by the questioner, and then she returned and said it's on my desk. She claims, was like all the papers for Epstein. Okay, fine, but you were very, very not clear about that at best. And then
let me interject quickly. The other piece of that's problematic, her excuse, is the Epstein file would fill a conference room, would fill a building. There's no way she had the Epstein file like it's a discrete file on her desk, which makes her explanation even less credible.
Pam Bondi, because I'm ripping the crap out of her right now, but
no, it's fine. You and I are factual. Let's stay factual.
It's possible to say on my desk as sort of a euphemism, or meaning like it's in front of me. But the one that was much more damning to me was the binder release, right? When she had a bunch of influencers in the White House, she hands them a binder filled with old crap, all redacted. And then they trot out and hold it up to the cameras like, hey, look, this is our big prize. And then it turns out that there's nothing new there. And then she sends a letter to Kash Patel at the FBI saying, why haven't you given me all these documents that I was supposed to be given? And there is no evidence that there are all these documents that Kash Patel was hiding somewhere in the basement that he had not given Pam Bondi. And then all we get is this 2-page letter that basically is supposed to put everything to bed. And so I'm not blaming anybody who's upset with the fact that they were told by Pam Bondi, at least by implication, that there was an Epstein list, that there were tens of thousands of hours of tapes, that there were 1,000 victims, that there was more coming, and then nothing happens, right? That seems to be on Pam Bondi. And that's why I think Dan Bongino is extremely upset today, because the contention he's making, from what I understand from my own sources, is not that Epstein is a foreign agent, and that's being hidden, or that Epstein was trafficking girls to third parties who remain hidden by the government, or anything like that, or that even there was an Epstein list per se. My understanding is that the actual outcome of the DOJ investigation is properly stated in that memo. What he's upset about is if you oversell the story and you create a deliverable for the FBI, and then the FBI doesn't deliver, then that falls on Kash Patel and Dan Bongino. And so Pam Bondi basically did that. She went out there and ran her mouth without the actual goods to back it up. And then when it turns out that it's Geraldo Rivera safe, then of course it makes Dan look bad, it makes Kash look bad, it makes the president look bad, and all the rest. That's my understanding of this dispute. And if that's the nature of the dispute, then obviously I'm very much on Dan Bongino's side and Kash Patel's side, because again, I think that Pam Bondi pretty clearly to the public made a bunch of statements that were unrepresentative of the final DOJ FBI memo that was released.
Many people, including me, do not believe that they've released everything that's releasable in Epstein. I think this is another piece of the problem, that we're left asking why. Now, maybe as Mike Davis, who's a serious person, who's well connected to the administration, was saying on X yesterday, maybe it really is because what's left is grand jury proceedings, which would be secret, not releasable, witness testimony, victim testimonials, which might reveal identities, which victims are not prepared to have revealed. That's all possible. But Pam Bondi hasn't answered any of those questions. No one has. No one's explained that. Mike Davis, much as we love him, is not a spokesperson for the administration. So we're still left in a position where at least I don't believe them that everything that can be released has been released.
So I do believe that that's the case, that they've released everything that can be released, but only because I trust Dan Bongino and Kash Patel and the president on this. Now, are those questions legit? Absolutely. And so I've been saying literally since the first day this memo broke that there's no way that Pam Bondi should not be doing a press conference where she at least answers that question. At the very least, I need to hear it from their mouth that this is that we're releasing everything that can be released. However, I'm very hesitant to make the claim that there is evidence that exists that I have not seen, because that's totally unfalsifiable. Right? I've only seen the same stuff that you've seen, Megan, and I'm probably talking to many of the same sources that you're talking to. People like Dan and Kash and Pam and the president and the vice president and everybody else in the administration, they have seen material that I have not seen, because, again, they're the ones who are reviewing the material. And so I am not prepared. You put out a tweet earlier that I think is right. Basically, there's two theories of this particular case. One, Pam Bondi overpromised and underdelivered, which seems to me the most plausible. Or two, there's an active cover-up that the Trump administration is engaging in of a child sex trafficking ring. And I think that if people want to make that accusation, they should just come out and say it. And if that's the case, if they want to make that accusation that President Trump and everybody who was elected to uncover this is actually now, they flipped 180, and now they're engaging in a full-scale cover-up of a child rape ring, then people should just have the balls to say it out loud and articulate it, as opposed to sort of softly peddling the possibility that it's, like, just say it, because it seems to me when you articulate these two possibilities out loud, one of them is significantly more plausible than the other. Now, again, that does not relieve the responsibility on the administration to answer basic questions of fact publicly, and that's where I think the great screw-up is. But I think there are a lot of people who are trafficking in unevidenced theory, and again, I can speculate all day long, you can too, and speculation is fun, but we now have a bunch of people who I trust. I trust Dan Bongino, I trust Kash Patel, and I do trust the President of the United States that he is not covering up a child rape ring.
Mm-hmm. Can I say this? My tweet was a little worded differently, which was either Pam Bondi is royally screwed up. I mean, she has. That's not in dispute. She's royally screwed up. And the president is just forgiving her because she's a loyal soldier and, he likes her and he doesn't want to go through the messy confirmation process of getting somebody else in there. So that's possible. That's definitely a possible number one. And there's no there in the files anyway, right? Like the way she screwed up was overpromising when she didn't have the goods, and she genuinely doesn't have the goods. And so the big mistake was overpromising, and the president doesn't really care about that mistake. Or there is something there and it's being covered up and the president blessed it, right? But I didn't say, or there's a child sex ring that he's actively covering up, because the truth is I think there's some middle ground between 1 and 2, your 1 and 2, of there is something in there, more could be disclosed, and it's something short of there's a massive pedophile ring that they're covering up. Like, it would have some names, those men would have to defend themselves. Maybe the administration doesn't think it's a fair position to put them in. Maybe there are questions about the accusers. Maybe there are like half-hearted allegations in there that, normally a DOJ would not put out, but feels like it kind of might have to, given all the promises that have been made by Pam and prior to taking office, Kash and Dan rattling about this. So I think there could be a middle ground. And also, look, this may be complete bullshit, but I've heard it from a few different people. So I just big asterisks on it. But some have speculated that the Biden DOJ may have left the Epstein files in such a manner that it leads directly with an arrow toward Donald Trump, just as a middle finger toward Trump. Not that he did anything whatsoever, just that they're bastards and they knew he was coming in and they knew his people were interested in this story. So something like that could be between your 1 and 2, where it's less nefarious than full child sex ring. And our government officials have said, let's just move on. We're not going to release this stuff just because you overpromised Pam Bondi and because we have a top 2 officials at the FBI who were big saber rattlers about this before they took office.
So I agree that there's a plausible idea somewhere in the in-between. But the reason that we care about the Epstein case is because everybody thinks it was a giant child sex ring.
That's
the reason we care about
that. That's one for sure. But 2 is transparency.
Well, and I agree on the transparency point. I totally agree, right? I mean, that's been the basis of this entire conversation. But the real reason that people care about Epstein is because the story that was sold for years in retail by pretty much everybody who had a passing even reference to the case was that Jeffrey Epstein was running a child sex ring on behalf of third parties, right, who were unnamed, and that we needed to have the list, the Epstein list, of the third parties who were having sex with little girls and then were being blackmailed by Jeffrey Epstein, which is how he made his money or how he was serving a foreign intelligence service, right? That is the theory. And so we ought to at least fully publicly articulate that is the theory that most people were operating under until this DOJ memo broke. And that is why people are freaked out right now. I mean, it's not just the transparency. If it turns out, let's put it this way, Megan, if it turns out that it's your middle of the road case and then those materials get released, that it turns out that there is some scurrilous reference to a third party and it ends up being unredacted, is anyone going to be satisfied? I would say the answer is no, because the theory has been so wildly retailed at this point and widely retailed at this point that anything short of a full justification of the theory means that somebody is covering something up. And this is where I start to get pretty yippy, because if the idea, and this is why I go back to my original reference, if the idea is that the full-scale theory is the thing that is being covered up by President Trump, then people who are making that sort of charge, and that includes, by name, Tucker Carlson at TPUSA, they should actually just say it. If you want to say it, then say it. I mean, Tucker says that Jeffrey Epstein was a Mossad agent who was blackmailing people on behalf of
We'll get to that next.
Mossad.
We're going to get to
Right?
that. Let's
So
just table Mossad agent for 2 minutes. You and I are definitely coming back to that, and we can talk about Tucker too.
I mean,
that's
totally
logically.
fine. The point I'm making about Tucker is a very simple one. If you're going to retail that claim and say that you are very certain of that claim, then the claim is really not about Mossad. It's about the United States government covering up for Mossad, which means the Trump administration covering up a sex ring. And if you are going to say the Trump administration and President Trump is covering up a sex ring, you should just have the balls to say it publicly.
Since President Trump was sworn in, his administration has made enormous progress at a breakneck pace. But don't forget, while they're moving mountains for the good of the nation, you've got your own personal savings to worry about. And one of the best ways to look after your savings is through diversification, particularly with gold, like from Birch Gold Group. In the past 12 months, the value of gold has increased by 40%. OMG. Going back to 2003, when you were trying to break this story, you were doing a profile of Jeffrey for Vanity Fair, and this was going to be a part of your profile on these two sisters that he had hurt. And same thing as we've seen with so many other girls, promises of like, I'll make your modeling career, or I'll help you get into a prestigious university. Yeah. All things you would believe he'd have the power to do, given his connections to Wexner, given his connections to MIT and Harvard and all these other places. And as I mentioned in the intro, Graydon Carter ultimately said, we're taking this out. You talked about how you were devastated, you were in tears, you had worked so you were very proud of this family for actually revealing this to you and being willing to come forward, because he was not outed yet. He was at the apex of his power, and to have made these allegations would have been very courageous at that time and thereafter, but especially at that time. And I wonder if you could just tell us what happened. So it got spiked. You had dealt with Jeffrey. You had interviewed him. And then you write about how you had your babies and you actually got yourself spun up into like, I don't know what this guy's capable of. This is well before he was outed.
Well, I was pregnant with my sons when I began reporting on Jeffrey Epstein. And the irony of this is that I had a high-risk pregnancy, so I wasn't allowed fly. And so I was assigned to write about Jeffrey Epstein, and I was assigned to find out where his money had come from, because for the first time in forever, he had appeared in the press. He was very press shy ordinarily, but there was a little item in page 6 in the New York Post saying that he had flown Bill Clinton on his plane to Africa. So I was assigned to go and find out who was this enigma who lived in this enormous house in New York and where'd the money come from. And the idea actually was that for me, it would be a very easy piece because I lived in New York too. And it became a nightmare because Jeffrey Epstein would get on the phone to me every day. He would phone me up pretty much to find out how I was getting on in my reporting. And he began to say things that, I didn't know what to do with, and the lawyers at Vanity Fair didn't know what to do with. Sort of like, well, if I don't like the direction this story goes in, I'll have a witch doctor place a curse on your unborn children. I mean, that was creepy. And then he would say, and by the way, that's off the record. And then he would say some really stupid things like, I'll make sure your children never get into school in New York, and I'll make sure your husband gets fired from his job, which are not really things you want to hear when you're pregnant with twins.
Witch doctor, academic career, and my husband's fired.
And by the way, this is all, off the record. And then what was really that unnerved me, where he very persistently wanting to know which hospital I was going to be giving birth at and who my doctors were. And he went into some graphic description for me of what would happen to my hormones as I was giving birth. And I just was like, this conversation has really crossed all propriety and normal boundaries. And it was, and the lawyers, that is why the lawyers at Vanity Fair said to me, we don't know who we're dealing with here. So I think you better start taping him, because we just had no idea what he was capable of. And I didn't tell him about the two farmer sisters until the 11th hour, quite deliberately. I slowly explained to him that I did have reporting about working with the guy I mentioned earlier, Steve Hoffenberg. I did have was able to go and find depositions he'd given admitting to financial shenanigans, both on Towers Financial and at Bear Stearns, all of which he was indignant about. But when it was when I finally got to the subject of the sisters, and one of them made claims really actually against him and against Ghislaine Maxwell, and one of them had been underage. That was when he went into hyperdrive, and he not only then faxed over these copies of letters, thank you letters, he said had been written by one of them as if this was sort of proof of anything, but he then found a way to actually physically go into the offices of Vanity Fair while the piece was sort of going through the machine, the editing machine and the fact-checking machine. And I know this because one of the fact-checkers sent me an email saying, you're not going to believe it, but Jeffrey Epstein is actually here in the office. Wow. And he's sitting in Clayton Carter's office. And I was, completely appalled. And I was told that he had somehow bypassed security. And he just, Graydon Carter had showed up for work, and there was Epstein sitting there. And the next thing that I knew was when I actually just read the finals of the piece, that all mention of the sisters had been taken out. And, I was, Graydon said to me, well, he's sensitive about the girls. And I'm like, well, of course he's sensitive about the girls. And yes, I was very, 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 very upset about it. And then, the piece came out right after I gave birth, and my children unfortunately were born at 30 weeks, so they were very premature, and I was absolutely terrified that Jeffrey Epstein would sort of find a way to get inside the hospital in the same way he'd got inside the offices of Vanity Fair. So, one of the reasons I've always wondered who the hell he really was and who, was he part of intelligence? There aren't that many people who could have bypassed security at Condé Nast back then in the middle of Times Square. I think we had a major law firm who we shared an elevator bank with. It would have been very, very difficult to do that. So, how he did that, I don't know. I was reading actually Tina Brown, who's another former great friend of mine, former colleague. She wrote in her newsletter this week that when she was editing, I think, the Daily Beast, she also found Jeffrey Epstein. She came back from lunch or somewhere, and there he was sitting in her office. I mean, normal people don't behave like this, Megan.
No.
So,
he's obviously looking to intimidate you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And obviously back then, the same system of soft male power that we were talking about earlier worked very effectively for him because the sisters were cut from the piece.
Oh, have you ever talked to Graydon Carter about, and I know editors make these decisions and so on, but with the benefit of hindsight, how he feels about that decision?
Yeah, no. So Graydon Carter, rather, predictably, came out and just, made all sorts of allegations about my reporting and, how I'm a terrible journalist. But the problem with that argument is that I then worked at Vanity Fair and wrote a large number of their significant pieces for a further decade or more. So I can't have been that terrible a reporter.
Wow. God, that's so annoying. I mean, you had him. You had him. Since President Trump was sworn in, his administration has made enormous progress at a breakneck pace. But don't forget, while they're moving mountains for the good of the nation, you've got your own personal savings to worry about. And one of the best ways to look after your savings is through